All right, think back to a day when you woke up feeling rested and recharged, ready to tackle your day. You were on your game. And then something happened. Maybe it's that email, that phone call, that brush fire that you just weren't expecting. And suddenly you are frustrated, agitated, maybe even discouraged. So let me ask you, what kinds of things knock you off your game? And I'd love to get a few examples in the chat for those that have some ideas, but is it related to your boss, a project, family, finances? What are a couple of things, examples, that just start getting you frustrated, that knock you off your game? So I'm just going to watch the chat here and see what examples come up. So please, if you think of something, please feel free to share it in the chat. Ooh, Nancy says comparison. Yeah, comparison maybe with someone else, the moods of the kids for sure. Ooh, other people's urgency. Yeah, that's like, yeah, just because it's your problem doesn't have to make it my problem. Items on the to-do list that get overlooked, unexpected events, boss making decisions without checking in. Oh, yeah, these are good ones. Thank you. Others feeling frustrated because of reasons beyond your control. Just before I started this, my daughter called me that she had walked out of class because she was so mad at her team. So I'm listening to her vent. I get that. Yes. Certain business contacts currently in your life. Okay. Ooh, just conflict in general. People pleasing, micromanaging bosses. These are great. So there's so many things that can knock us off our game. And think of how, when that happens, how it affects you and your day, how it impacts your patience with other people, how it affects your ability to focus and get things done. So I love diagrams. So I think of it like this. Here's pressure, right? Here is pressure from challenging people, uncertainty, overwhelm, and these can cause inner chaos. I love that term. And when we have this inner chaos, it brings out this reactive part of ourselves that easily gets defensive and frustrated, impatient. And then there's the impact. Right now, our brain has less ability to focus, less clarity. We may say things that strain our relationships, to name just a few impacts. And pressure looks different for all of us, right? Some of the things mentioned here, the micromanaging boss, the moody kids, could be a deadline that gets moved up for a project at work. Maybe your partner says something that stings. But now imagine something different. What if you could have more capacity to handle these moments, more inner alignment? Because now you can spend more time as your best self. And now it's easier to be calm and confident and patient so that you can thoughtfully respond instead of react with your kids or your partner. But here's the challenge most of us face. We try to manage the situation without managing what's happening inside of us first. We react from inner chaos instead of responding from inner alignment. So let me give you an example of how this can play out in real life. A while back, a few friends and I were carpooling to a dinner party. And when we picked up our friend Laura, I offered her the front seat and sat in the back with a different friend. On the drive, I noticed Laura seemed unusually quiet, but I didn't think much about it. When we arrived, she disappeared. So it wasn't until I saw her later that I had a chance to check in and I said, "Are you okay?" She looked at me coldly and said, "I'm fine," which, as you and I both know, means she was not fine. So I asked another friend who said, "Laura is upset with you." I'm like, what the heck? It turns out Laura thought that I offered her the front seat because I didn't want to sit by her, that I would rather talk to someone else, and that I didn't care that she disappeared when we first got to the party. So my first reaction was, seriously? We are close friends. How could you possibly think that? I was definitely feeling inner chaos. And the old me would have gotten triggered and defensive and likely would have carried that tension through the whole night. Maybe avoided Laura altogether. But the new me, with more inner alignment, did something different. I was able to calm that chaos, and I chose to respond with caring curiosity. I told Laura, I said, I am so sorry to hear that I did something that made you upset. That was never my intention. Your friendship means a lot to me. And as I listened to her explain, I could feel her resistance soften because it turns out she was already stressed and she really wanted to talk to me about it and was hoping we'd sit together in the car so she could tell me. And of course, from there, when that didn't happen, it just escalated. So, what could have turned into a really tense evening turned into a meaningful conversation. So, what made that possible? How did I go from my first reaction and that inner chaos to inner alignment and my best self? It wasn't willpower. It wasn't positive thinking. It was a missing piece I've only discovered in the last couple of years. And now I can look back at moments in my own life and finally see how this piece makes all the difference. What is that piece? Let me show you through a moment I wish I could go back and do differently. This moment goes back about 8 years ago. After a health issue that sent me down a rabbit hole of research, I stumbled upon the work of Dr. Nasha Winters. She's this brilliant clinician, all about the science, decades of experience, and also a thriver 30 years after a terminal cancer diagnosis. I loved her passion and her fire, and I quickly became a big fan. So I couldn't resist taking her training to be a cancer patient advocate, even though that was never in my plans. And when I finished that training, I was invited to join a small team inside her organization. It felt like a dream come true. I was so honored. You should have seen my happy dance. And our task for the team was simple: create clear, practical handouts for patients, grocery lists, foods to avoid. And as the newbie, my job was to go back through my training, gather up the information, hand it off to Terry, who was going to put it in the template. So I triple checked my work and I sent it off. A few days later, the draft lands in my inbox. I excitedly open it up and my stomach drops. Small font, long paragraphs, the exact opposite of simple. And I knew I had to say something. But how do you give feedback to someone you've barely met? So I reached out for help, and Patty was quick to respond. She likes to give me advice. And she leaned in and said, "Oh, yeah, Tina, you are going to have to be careful. What if Terry gets upset? What if she thinks you don't like her or her work?" And I said, "But these handouts, they're not useful like this." Patty warned me, she said, "But if Terry feels hurt, it could create tension. You're the new person on the team. You don't want to cause waves. What if you jeopardize this opportunity to be part of Dr. Nasha's mission? Better to keep quiet." And it didn't feel right, but Patty had a point, so I didn't say anything. The handouts went out, and the team could clearly see how awful they were. and it took the team lead a whole day working with Terry to fix the issues. So instead of feeling proud of my contribution, I felt horrible, like a failure. And the only one I had to blame was Patty. Now, that may not sound fair, but she gave me bad advice. And there's something important you should know about Patty. She's not one of my girlfriends. She's not a coworker. In fact, Patty's not even a real person. She's actually an aspect of my personality, my people pleaser part. The part of me that wants to keep everybody happy, wants people to like me. Does that sound familiar to some of you? Maybe you can relate. And the mistake that I made with the handouts wasn't listening to Patty. The mistake was letting Patty run the show. And I've learned this is not unique to me, that we all have parts that can take over. This is the missing piece. So, not so sure you have parts? I was super skeptical at first too. But have you ever said to yourself something like, a part of me wants to join my friends for dinner tonight, but another part of me just wants to chill at home. Or a part of me wants to get up and go for a run, and another part of me just wants to stay in bed. Turns out we have patterns of thoughts and emotions that keep showing up. And once you start noticing them, you'll likely start seeing your parts everywhere. For an example, I have an impatient part that can come up when I'm getting the runaround from a customer service person. I have a planner part that I notice when I'm talking with my husband about retirement and finances. But for most of my life, I never knew anything about parts, much less that I had parts. And interestingly, that understanding came from a rather unexpected place in my life. So, as some of you might know, my career actually started as a scientist in biotech. I was helping big pharma find new cancer drugs. And then I hung up my lab coat, became a speaker in positive psychology, focused on helping people realize the power of their thoughts. But the real turning point came when I began working with cancer patients after training with Dr. Nasha Winters. These people were facing enormous stress and uncertainty, and I started to notice something. Healing wasn't just about the therapies or the diet. Over and over, I witnessed how their stress, that inner chaos, was an obstacle to their healing. And then I slowly realized that this inner chaos is also an obstacle for most of us. It gets in the way of enjoying our best life, of making us reactive and defensive instead of being calm and compassionate. And then during this time, I was introduced to a psychological framework called Internal Family Systems, or IFS. This was developed by Dr. Dick Schwartz back in the 1980s. So it's based on decades of research and practice that shows that our minds are naturally full of different parts. And these parts are trying to protect us. It gave me a completely different understanding of what was happening inside of me, and more importantly, how to actually work with it. I mean, positive psychology was helpful, don't get me wrong, I love it, but it wasn't enough to transform these activated parts of me. And IFS changed everything. I was so moved and inspired by what it did for my inner world that I had to find a way to bring it to others. And that's what became inner alignment. It is based on concepts from IFS. And I wanted to make these concepts Easy to use, easy to remember, so that we can stay calm when work goes sideways, that we can stay connected and compassionate when our partner or kids are snippy, and most importantly, to be nice to ourselves. So that's what led me to create this framework that I call the Align model. Let me walk you through it real quickly. So A is awareness, aware that a part is activated. L is listen. Listen to that part. What is it saying? I is inquire. Inquire. Ask this part questions about its fears and concerns. And I know that may sound a little strange, but we're going to get into this. And then G is give this part reassurance that you hear it, that you understand it, because then we are ready to navigate. These parts can start to relax and we can decide the best action to take from our best self. Now, these are going to make more sense as we dive in here, but today I'm going to give you a brief overview of each of these. I also have workshops and trainings I do that go deeper, really using this approach. And you can even learn how to use this as a common language in groups, in teams. It can improve trust and safety. But let's dive in. Let's start, of course, with A, awareness. Notice that a part is activated. This is like noticing that voice in your head, noticing any unpleasant thoughts, emotions, feelings, even tightness, maybe in your chest, in your jaw. You feel off your game. That's a sign that a part needs your attention. And this self-awareness does not come naturally. It takes intention and attention. So we need to practice, but this is a key step. You won't get anywhere until you start to notice. So if we can pause and step back to think about what we think about, what we feel, then we can become the observer and not just the participant in our stories. It might sound like, oh, interesting. There's a part of me that's upset with Chris. And if you think back on your day or your week, do any moments come to mind where you were triggered or frustrated? That's a part talking. Now, our society and often even our families tend to teach us to focus on the outer world in situations with little, if any, attention to what's happening inside of us. You've probably been told to get over it. It's nothing to cry about. Toughen up, buttercup. So, in general, we're not very good at paying attention to our inner world. So let's take a moment to just give this a try. Let's see if you can identify one of your parts right now. And I invite you to close your eyes if you'd like and just listen, or you can, of course, keep your eyes open. And maybe there's even a part of you right now that says, oh, I don't want to do this, or I don't think this will work. This sounds so crazy. Or maybe you sense a part that is planning. Maybe it's worrying. Maybe it's just tired. Maybe you notice multiple parts taking turns and jabbering in your head and like fighting for your attention. Or maybe some parts feel like they don't even like each other, like they're arguing with each other. I'm going to give you just like 30 seconds to just go inside and notice. So again, this is totally up to you, but if you would like to share anything that came up for you, feel free to put it in the chat, or if you would like to go off mute, you could raise your hand. I think I can monitor all my screens here and see that, or just unmute and start speaking up. But I'd love to hear how that went. What was that like? Critic about how you ate today. Oh, yeah, that's a part. There you go. Good job. Sometimes it's like, oh, let's have that cookie. No, you better not have it, right? Two different parts. Anybody else? Distracted, wanting to text someone while watching this. Oh my gosh, isn't that so easy? I think that's the hardest thing about Zoom. It's like, I'm just going to text this person or check my email or look this up quick. I get that that's a part.
I have
Anybody
a
else?
part of me that's been wanting to control a lot lately, and because I can't predict the future. So, but I want to be able to predict the future, and that came up quite a bit today as I'm making some plans for the rest of this year. And
Mm,
then it's like, why can't you know what's going to happen? And like I'd get pretty frustrated about it. So releasing that need for control, but there's some controlling going on.
oh yes, thank you for that. Oh, those parts, yep, they like to do that. Let's see. Part planning what I have to do tomorrow. Oh yeah, that planner part's so important, right? Complex because Elise knows I was texting and calling. Oh, there's that honesty coming up. Yes, I totally get it. Yes, how that happens. So I hope maybe it was a voice, a feeling, something. How often do we even take 30 seconds to tune in and see what's going on? And yet, that is such an important first step in all of this, right? And even often, the moment we simply recognize the part, it starts to loosen its grip. All right, let's jump to L. This is listen. Once we become aware of a part, now we can tune in and see, oh, which part is talking? What is it saying? And the whole goal here is to just witness. No judgment, no pushing away, just listen. And honestly, even just getting to this step, I can notice an inner shift. I mean, now the chaos can start to settle, the noise, the judgments, the inner struggles. Because I'll even say, oh, look, there's my planner part. Oh, there's my controller part. I see them. And even if I just can notice that, it really does make a difference. And I have to be honest that when I first learned that I had these inner parts, as I mentioned, I was really skeptical. It just sounds creepy or weird. But then I started paying attention and I was noticing them everywhere. It was like opening a door to a whole cast of characters. So here are a few I've gotten to know. Maybe you can resonate with some of these. I've already introduced you to Patty, my people pleaser. Then there's my judge. She's loud, she's sharp. She'll say something like, oh, Tina, how can you be so stupid if I make a mistake? I have a wonderful analyzer part. She's so helpful. Like when I'm trying to learn something new or research something, but not when I'm supposed to be maybe enjoying a sunset or trying to get some sleep. She just doesn't know when to stop overthinking. Here's an interesting one, my numbing part. Now she's fascinating. She's the reason I can stay calm and professional in almost any situation, even speaking in front of audiences, right? So pretty handy. But she also has a habit of dulling down all my emotions, and it can feel like I don't fully experience my life. So if you've ever wondered why you react the way you do to certain situations, why some moments seem to trigger such a strong response, shutting down, lashing out, overthinking, it's your parts. So what about you? Do you have a pleaser part? Or maybe you have different parts that get loud under pressure. And if you start paying attention, you might notice parts like a perfectionist that wants everything done just right, or a hyperanalyzer like mine that wants to always be digging deeper into the problem. That planner part just wants us to be productive and not forget anything. Avoiders, hyperachievers, inner critics. These are some common parts people have, and there is a much longer list in your handout that's in the chat. And if you didn't get it, if you don't see it in the chat, let me know. I can email it to you. But notice that these parts are not bad and that they have good qualities and good intentions. I mean, paying attention to details like a perfectionist, that can be a good thing, right? I mean, I hope my accountant is a perfectionist or wanting people to be happy, that pleaser. These aren't bad things. The challenge is when they go overboard and they start running the show, when they take over. And today, that's what we're going to focus on the parts that take over. So, again, parts are not bad. And one critical shift that can really help us notice which part is activated and get better at listening to it is this difference between speaking from our parts versus speaking for them. And this may sound like a subtle shift, but this is huge. So thinking, oh, I'm upset at this customer service person is coming from the part. But if I reword it and I say, oh, a part of me is upset at this customer service person, I am speaking for the part. And let's go back to the handouts for the cancer patients with Patty and the people pleaser. Remember, she's so worried if I say something about the layout that I'll be judged harshly by the team and maybe lose this opportunity. Well, if I speak for the part, if I am in the part, it sounds like this. Oh, let's see, I have this backwards. I'm going to start with speaking from it first. So, what if Terry gets upset? What if she thinks I don't like her? What if they think I'm not a good team player? I could jeopardize this opportunity, right? I'm immersed in it. I'm using words like and I can't see beyond the emotions and the stress. But if I can speak for it, it really feels different. For example, I can say, I have a part that is worried I might upset Terry or create tension in the team. And this part is really concerned that I could jeopardize this opportunity working with Dr. Nasha. So let's take a closer look. Imagine things don't go as expected in your day with a project, whatever it is. And you might think, I'm discouraged, right? If you're speaking from the part, you would say, oh, I'm so discouraged about this not going right, this breaking. But if you can reword it, then we can say, oh, a part of me is discouraged at what's happening. Or from the part sounds like, oh, I'm feeling so anxious about this upcoming meeting. Or, oh, a part of me is feeling anxious. One more, I'm so frustrated that this happened. Oh, a part of me is very frustrated. This rewording really helps us become the observer and not just the participant. But I'm amazed people have such a hard time grasping this slight shift. And yet it's huge. So from the part often feeds the negative emotion. It just keeps building it. It's not going to relax. But when we speak for it, it helps us think more calmly and clearly. When we speak from the part, we're focusing on what the part wants, what the part thinks should happen. But when we can speak for it, we can consider what's best for the situation from our best self. And when we speak from the part, it means the part is actually in control. Versus speaking for the part helps our best self have more control. So I'd love for us to experiment with this and give you a chance to experience this difference. So in a minute, we're going to go into breakout rooms, groups 2 or 3. And I encourage you to pick a trigger, a situation, something medium to maybe low intensity, nothing super hot, something you're comfortable sharing. And here's just a list to kind of get ideas flowing, maybe help you think of something. Because I know if someone puts me on the spot and is like, think of something, about this, my mind goes blank. So what kind of part or trigger might come up if you're running behind schedule? How about if someone cuts you off while you're driving? Or your child comes home in a bad mood? Or your partner forgets to run an errand? Or your check engine light comes on? So just give you some ideas, see if something else comes up, or you can certainly use one of these. And what we're going to do is I'm going to ask you in your breakout rooms to take turns. And when it's your turn, you're going to start by speaking from it. You're reliving the moment. You're in it. It's like, I'm frustrated, I'm discouraged, I'm anxious. And a little explanation of what the situation is, why you're anxious and discouraged. And then I'm going to ask you to just pause, take a breath, release the emotion, and shift and use the words, a part of me is anxious or discouraged. Don't try to change the situation. Don't try to fix anything. This is just about changing the words. So, any questions before we go into breakout rooms for about 4 minutes? So each person gets like a minute, minute and a half to do this. Any questions? So, again, I would love to just hear from maybe a couple people. What was that like? Was it confusing? Were you able to at least try it a little bit or experiment with it?
You. Well, you put us in a situation with the task at hand, and it made me, I would never have shared from the part. And once I
Mhm.
said that, it really did clear, there was this definitive space between the two once I said that. So I felt that physically when I said it. And I had a great breakout room buddy too.
That's awesome. Yeah, yeah, and that's my hope is for people to get a taste of that, but sometimes it's not easy when you're, under this kind of pressure and in a breakout room and with somebody you don't know and all of that. But that's awesome. Anybody else have an experience to share?
Hi Tina. I would say that it was a little anxious for me to try to come up
Mhm.
with something quickly, but
Exactly.
I also experienced like saying it as a part of me was so on and so forth. It's that detachment from you can step back away from the emotion.
Right.
So you still recognize you're frustrated, but you don't necessarily feel this frustration when you say it like that.
Mhm. That's awesome. That is awesome. Yeah, thank you. And so I hope some of you at least got a taste of that because that is the outcome, the goal of doing this. Um, yeah, and so then,
Tina,
yeah.
this is Nancy. So can I just share that I had something happen that has not happened to me when I've tried this before.
Ooh.
And so, and what it was is when I first said it, I talked about the frustration, right? And maybe this is exactly what you're telling us, and I'm just making the connection now. But
Mhm.
instead of like when I went to a part of me is frustrated, um, because and I added this because of and the reason there it was like another layer deeper the reason why instead of because he cuts me off it was because I don't feel heard. So when
Mm,
I was angry and saying I'm really mad and I'm frustrated because he cuts me off, but then when I said a part of me is really frustrated because I don't feel heard, so it
ooh.
was a different.
Yeah, that's cool. Oh, I love that. Yes. Thank you. That is so cool. Yes. So really it's tuning in, right? Really paying attention. And these first two steps, awareness and listens, that helps us recognize what's happening inside. But the next two steps are where this approach becomes different from most things I had ever heard before. And this is where we get to know this part by actually asking it questions. And I know this may sound a little strange, but let's take a deeper look. We really want to know what are its fears and concerns? I'm not being heard, right? That's so huge. So, first of all, why would you even want to get to know your part, right? I mean, if it's causing problems and sabotaging your decisions and relationships, maybe the question should be like, how do you get rid of them or at least manage them better? Can we fire them, fix them, ignore them, suppress them, you know, make out like they're unruly children in the back seat? And what I've learned is it's none of those. And it's interesting because most approaches I had learned that once you notice this reaction that you should override it, right? Choose differently. But IFS turned everything upside down for me because the way to manage our parts isn't about fighting or forcing. It's actually about acknowledging them and understanding and appreciating them and building trust with them so they don't feel like they have to run the show. Because these parts are not trying to sabotage us, they are trying to protect us. They care about us and they think they're helping. So the key thing here is it's not about force, it's about relationship. And that's why Dick Schwartz wrote his book called No Bad Parts. Because everyone he's ever worked with and all the tens of thousands of therapists that use this find over and over again that there are no bad parts and that the shadow parts of us didn't come to ruin our life. They came to protect it. So recognizing that even the parts of us we don't like, they're not bad. It's this huge step towards radical self-acceptance and self-love. So instead of overriding the reaction, suppressing the part, the inquire step invites us to get curious. We can ask things like, what do you want me to understand? And what are you worried about? What do you need? And when parts of us do not feel welcomed, when they do not feel like they are heard, if they feel instead like they're disliked and pushed away, they don't disappear. They actually can express themselves sideways, like through symptoms or even a diagnosis, through patterns we can't understand or control. And we may think we need to medicate it or fix it, but these patterns of reacting are ignored parts that need our attention. And when we can have these parts feel heard and understood, they can transform back to their naturally valuable states. And that's exactly what IFS has found to be true time and again, because when we resist parts, they persist. When we welcome parts, they transform. And once we understand what the part is concerned about, the next step is to give reassurance. Let them know that you hear them and that you've got this. I mean, think about a good leader on a team. When someone on the team is worried, a strong leader doesn't ignore them or shut them down. They acknowledge the concern and then provide calm direction. And that's exactly what we're doing here. But internally, parts that feel heard often relax. And so, what does reassurance sound like? It sounds a lot like when we want to reassure a real person, whether it's a customer, a friend, a colleague. It may sound like acceptance. Hey, it's okay that you feel this way. I was just talking to my daughter right before this call, and she's so mad at her team in her class. I'm like, oh, I get it. And it's even to appreciate, to say thank you for all that you do to protect me. You work so hard. Or I hear your concern. I've got this. Or let's figure this out together. You don't have to do it alone. And it's fascinating how the parts of us that cause the most trouble are often the parts that are trying the hardest to protect us. But who's listening? Who's appreciating and giving reassurance? When your survival instinct feels safe, when your ego is calm, when your beliefs and stories are not being challenged, and when that inner and outer world are not stressed out, what's left? This time it's not a part. I call it your best self. And in IFS, it's called self with a capital S. And our best self has certain characteristics. Dr. Schwartz calls these the 8 C's. And you can think of them like this. When we approach a trigger or a situation with calm curiosity, right, then we can get more clarity and creativity to see the best path forward. We can find the courage and the confidence to take action. have more connectedness with ourselves and others, to take action with compassion. And your best self knows which of these C's this particular situation needs the most and what action to take. Your best self takes you from self-protection, right, by these parts, to self-leadership. And what I love is when we have more access to best self, we actually have a slower heart rate and deeper breathing and a stronger immune system, relaxed muscles, and that prefrontal executive part of our brain, that reasoning part, can function optimally. It helps us with problem solving and conflict resolution, compassionate communication, and it's contagious. So if we go back to Patty the people pleaser and the concerns about the team, let me show you what that might look like. Could I ask for a volunteer who can access that Word document in the chat? Is there someone there who could be brave? And I'm just going to ask you to play Patty the people pleaser, and I'm going to read myself, the Tina, but the best Tina, when I'm my best self. So I'm going to be myself, and you're going to be Patty. So hopefully you can see this, and I'm going to say, I see you and hear how worried you are. You really don't want me to upset Terry or create tension on this new team. What else do you want me to know?
Exactly. If you speak up, she might feel hurt, and then people might think you're not a team player. That could be bad for you.
I get it. You're working so hard to protect me from conflict and rejection.
I just want to keep things smooth and safe.
That makes sense. Thank you for caring so much about me. What else would you like me to know about this?
Well, you're new on the team. They don't know or trust you yet. You need to build your reputation with them before you go in and start complaining or pointing fingers.
I agree. It's important to build trust with the team. And sometimes bringing up a concern like wondering if this template for the handout could be improved actually can build trust. How would you feel if I thanked Terry for all her hard work and gently asked if there was even more we could do to make it better? I won't push it. And that's just like an example of what an internal conversation could sound like. And accessing more of your best self. I mean, how can we find this more? Because our best self actually never goes anywhere. It's actually quiet. And then if your parts take over, it can feel far away because parts are loud when they get triggered. But there are simple ways we can find our way back to best self. And I bet some of you already know what some of these are. Some things that you do already that help you be more calm, clear, open-hearted. I'd love for you to throw a few ideas in the chat. Oh yeah, Andrea, breathe deeply. Breathing. We're getting a lot of breathing coming on. Yes. Oh, how long is this matter? How long is this issue going to matter? Change your perspective. That's great. Yeah. Can we get a couple more? Then I'll put up a longer list too. But ask, is this true? Ooh, yeah. Get moving, walk, get outside. Talk to someone you trust. Mm. Remind yourself you cannot change everything all at once. Yeah.
Listen to meditation music.
Yeah, music. Oh, thank you. Yes. Shake it out. Yeah, so I've got these organized like things through the body, right? Movement, shaking, breath work, dancing, exercise, through stillness, meditation, nature, a long bath, through connection with friends, pets, music, a hobby where you can get into flow. So your deepest wisdom doesn't shout, right? It waits for that noise to settle. And yet it can feel so unproductive, right? To take that time to be still and access that best self. But it pays off, right? Because now we are at the end, the navigate. This is where change happens. How are we going to navigate the situation? What are we going to do and say next? And now that we've reassured our parts and we've listened to them, we have more access to our best self and more access to those 8 C's to decide the best path forward, right? because our best self understands, does this situation need more confidence right now, more creativity? I mean, it could look like this. I have a part that's feeling frustrated. Oh, let me see what this part needs me to know. How can I bring more compassion and curiosity to this? This situation feels like I need more courage. So without access to our best self, that wise leader, our inner world can become out of balance, right? It's like a chaotic board of advisors without a leader, and each member has its own priorities and beliefs and ideas and fears. And usually the loudest one is what takes over and jumps in the driver's seat, like a classroom without a good teacher or a troop of soldiers without a good commander. But when our inner world of parts feels that they have that trustworthy, wise leadership where they each can provide their perspective and their concerns without feeling like they need to run the show, that's when we can go from that reactivity and inner chaos to inner alignment. So I have two main things I want to make sure we get in here. And this, we kind of started a little bit late. So this is probably, if you have to go at the hour, I'm sorry, but there will be a recording, but I would love to go to at least 5 minutes after here to fit these next two parts in. Because I would like you the opportunity to experiment with these aligned steps. And this is just a self-reflection, so you won't be sharing with others. And I just want to gift you this time to play with it because I know you're going to be distracted and busy when you leave here. And I want you to remember that any experience with this is perfect. If you don't feel or sense anything, that's totally normal when you first try this. But again, I encourage you to pick a trigger or a part of medium or low intensity. Here are some ideas again to just get the juices flowing if you need more ideas, like, oh, you made a mistake that impacted others. Someone disagreed with your idea or decisions, or someone backed into your car, your child had a tantrum in public, or a colleague got the promotion instead of you, or school called and your child caused trouble. So I invite you to just take a couple minutes here and close your eyes and just listen to my voice as I walk you through these steps. And you can totally skip this too, of course, no pressure. But think of that situation that can be triggering or that triggered you. And then see if you can notice that part that shows up. Can you step back and speak for that part? And even in your head say, oh, a part of me is what, worried, anxious? See if you can speak for that part. And then get to know it. Ask it some questions. Ask it, what are its concerns? What does it want you to know? Just see if an answer comes up. Just notice if anything happens. What is it afraid of? What does it need? Give it reassurance. Let it know that you hear it, that you understand it, that you appreciate how hard it works to protect you. And then think about, what would your best self choose to do about this situation? You know, if you think of the 8 C's, what would your best self think would be most helpful? Is it more curiosity, compassion? Is it remaining calm? Or do you need some courage or confidence, some clarity, maybe some creativity? And this is just for you, right? This is just for you to play with this experiment a little bit, see what it's like. And if nothing happened, that's totally perfect. And if something happened, that's fantastic. And I even want to propose a practice you can do at home. And this is also in the handout. Like for the next 7 days, each day, find one thing that triggered you during the day, journal about it related to this align model, follow each step. You could even write a few paragraphs from that part, feeling fully immersed in the part's emotions. Get it out, witness it. And then maybe write a note back to the part from your best self. All right, we may be done with the 5 steps of the aligned model, but there's one more key point to consider before we end. Other people have parts too. Our customers, work colleagues, families, and friends. And these parts influence their behaviors, their emotions, their perspective. And their parts can trigger our parts and vice versa, right? So we can think, oh, what part of them is showing up right now? And what part of me is reacting to it? Because when we know our own parts, it's easier to recognize theirs. And when parts are interacting with parts, that's when we have drama and misunderstanding. But when we can bring more of our best self, it draws out their best self. And now we can have true connection, true collaboration. And the key is to remember that we're not just interacting with people, we're interacting with their parts. We can actually use these same 5 steps of the align model with other people on the outside, not just internally with our parts. And I don't have time to go through the details today, but I want to just give you this QR code. You can scan this. This will take you to a page on my website where you can download 1-page summaries of using the align model on your inner world with your parts and a slight variation of using it with others externally. I also want to just say if this topic resonates with you and you want to learn more, you can sign up for my weekly tips that are related to inner alignment and positivity. You can check out my website where I have books and websites and resources around IFS and positive psychology, and talk to me about presentations or trainings for any groups. But I want to close with a story about a dear friend, Leslie, someone who never once used the words inner alignment and yet found her way through to inner alignment via a journey that changed us both. I told you earlier that my detour into working with cancer patients was completely unplanned, and it was, but it wasn't unexpected. What do I mean? Well, back in 2015, I reconnected with Leslie. She was a former colleague from my biotech days, and we hadn't been close back then, but Leslie had heard about my new direction into positive psychology, and she really wanted to learn more. So she reached out and we met up for coffee. Soon as we sat down, she started drilling me with questions. She was so curious about everything I was doing. Finally, I was able to turn the conversation back to her, and I said, "So, what have you been up to?" She gave me a strange look and said, "A few years ago, I had a lung removed. I was diagnosed with lung cancer." I was stunned. I said, "I'm so sorry. How are you doing now?" She smiled and said something I'll never forget. She says, "I feel better than I have in decades because I'm finally taking care of myself." And then she launched into everything she'd been researching and doing on her own, alternative approaches, lifestyle changes, mindset work. Then she said something that shocked me. She said she was actually grateful for her cancer diagnosis. She said it had changed her life for the better. And she had a dream of writing a book and speaking about everything she'd learned along the way. That first meeting turned into monthly conversations and then a deep friendship. We talked about her dreams. We talked about life and death. We laughed. We cried. And again, she would say how grateful she was, not for the cancer itself, but for what it taught her to listen to her body, to be kind to herself, to focus on what truly mattered. Leslie had found her way to inner alignment the hard way. She was doing great and far outlived her expiration date, but eventually the cancer came back, stage 4, terminal. She made the decision to enter into hospice. She had asked me to come visit her after she moved in. And when I got there, her family was there, so I hung out quietly in the background. I couldn't believe it. I mean, Leslie laid there unresponsive, and we had just been texting the day before. And when it was time to leave, I walked up to her and I laid my hand on her arm and I said, Leslie, this is Tina. I just came to say hi, but I'm heading out now. I didn't think she could hear me, but suddenly she became extremely agitated, thrashing and restless. And out of nowhere, these words came out of my mouth. Don't worry. I promise I will make sure your message gets out there. She immediately calmed down and I left. That night, she passed away. And I was left thinking, I just made a promise I can't keep. Because at that time, I had no interest or knowledge about cancer. I felt awful. But a very wise friend told me, don't worry. When the time is right, you'll know how to keep that promise. Fast forward a few years to my own health crisis, and suddenly I find myself training with Dr. Nasha, working with cancer patients. Unplanned, but not unexpected. And I remember thinking, hey, Leslie, I'm finally keeping my promise. But over time, something deeper became clear. Leslie's message was never really about cancer or diet or even alternative treatments. It was about inner alignment. It was about realizing what actually matters in our lives, and that is our relationship with ourselves. Because it's hard to bring kindness, appreciation, and love into the world if we don't have it for ourselves first. We can't heal the world if we don't start with our own inner world first. Thank you.